Okay, so we're going to start this morning with the Irish Independent, and the back page of the Irish Independent. To emulate Croatia, we need players at top clubs. Martin O'Neill, this is an exclusive interview that Dan McDonnell has done with Martin O'Neill. We'll get into that in just a minute. Hart Dubs Showdown will be acid test of Tyrone's progress. I'm not being disparaging, but sorry, I missed that one there. The Tyrone boss isn't getting carried away. It's definitely good to be scoring as much as we have. And again, people will measure this on the level of opposition that we're playing. In fairness, he's right. As you were making the point yesterday, suddenly they've scored 744 in 2 games or whatever it was. Jim Gavin knew the figure straight off. I was like, oh, that's... but anyway, Liverpool and £62 million world record offer for Roma's Brazil keeper Allison. This is a welcome development from the Irish Independent to report transfer fees in the currency in which the bid is made, as opposed to translating it to euros and going, well, what is that actually in old British pounds, which is what the transfer fees that we grew up looking at were.
So you're in favour of the pound sterling transfer fee? I'm not quite sure where to stand on that. Obviously, that is the amount of money in the currency
that the bid is being made.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess that makes sense.
Why are we like, oh, well, you don't have the euro, you've got the euro. It's a little bit... I think,
or maybe poor Irish people don't understand the conversion rate from sterling to euro. But like, maybe that's why we need to get it translated to us.
I don't know. We always grew up with like the world record transfer fee was always written about in pounds. It's like our currency is the euro, and we're self-confident enough to know that you have your own currency, and that's fine too. That's what I think. Do we talk about Martin O'Neill now?
Yeah, we may as well. Dan's obviously got an exclusive with him over the last couple of days. It's printed inside in the Indo this morning, a 2-page spread. There's some interesting stuff in it. There is kind of the obvious sort of notion that if you compare Ireland to Croatia, it would help for Ireland to close that gap to teams like Croatia if they have players of the likes of Ivan Rakitic or Luka Modric. So that's not exactly a bombshell there from Martin O'Neill saying that if you had 2 Champions League winners, we would be a better team. And he's talking about Irish players and that the future needs to be them playing regularly in Premier League. He's not getting carried away with himself saying we might have players of Modric or Rakitic's abilities one day. But he is saying in the future there will be players of Roy Keane and Robbie Keane. It might be after his tenure is finished, but he does expect players of that quality to come through. He talks about the under-17s defeat to the Netherlands a couple of months ago and the heartbreak of that, and how he's very encouraged by that. Of course, Troy Parrott signed a contract with Tottenham Hotspur just yesterday, so it's quite timely that those quotes are coming out. But ultimately, you get the sense of a man who is heartbroken by what happened last November. He is heartbroken by the fact that Ireland weren't in the World Cup, that he was there for the ITV, he saw everything happening, he looked left, right and centre, and he just saw this festival of football. And it wasn't to do with the idea that Denmark managed to progress deep into the tournament or that Croatia managed to get to the final. It was to do with the fact that he missed being there as a manager of a team in this festival in Moscow and actually having an investment in his own football team there. And that's the sense I get after the interview. It's quite an insight to how heartbroken he is, to, I guess, a little bit of anger to how the 5-1 was depicted in the media and the hate he got after that it was a little bit of an unfair criticism of him. He then also talks about the style of play and the amount of set-piece goals that were scored in the World Cup. And he says, well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, set-piece goals are more important now. Look at VAR, look at the amount of corners that are being scored. It's quite important. We score set-pieces quite well, and our strength is only going to get stronger.
Yes, except he does also point out that Denmark's goal came off a short corner because the amount of time that you have for preparation with the players is so limited at international level. So I'm not sure. Criticism of his tactical preparation has irked him. He accepts as part of the job, but he raises the away win in Austria and asks how a team could have achieved that without the right setup. We're in this situation now where Martin O'Neill is going to be asked about the amount of time that he spends doing tactical setup with the players. The stories will continue to leak out that they don't really practice that type of stuff that much, and the battle lines are drawn for the next 6 months of friendlies / Nations Cup matches. So it's going to be I think it's going to be a very tense relationship that Martin O'Neill has from this point going forward. It's hard to see a way around that.
Yeah, like
with Ireland and with the football media.
It's true. Like, you're right in what you're saying. I mean, we don't know how much time is going into that sort of stuff. We don't know how much time he plans to put into that sort of stuff. We don't know definitely how that style is going to change, but the suspicion certainly is that not much is going to change in terms of the style of play. Will things change in terms of how effective they are? Well, maybe. Like Dan correctly points out there that Shane Duffy has been Ireland's biggest goal-scoring threat, and O'Neill does talk about kind of a continued reliance on set pieces, but then a continued global reliance on set pieces might be the case. So I guess that's his defence.
Is VAR in all international football from now on? Do we get it in the Nations Cup?
It certainly seems that way, and from that interview, I'm not quite sure. It was obviously a FIFA introduction. Whether or not UEFA are going to roll it out and everything, I'm not quite sure.
So on to the Irish Examiner this morning. Warsaw Woe, gutsy Cork City bow out of Champions League to Legia, beaten 3-0. Crossing the line, my mother got criticism about me, says Kerry's Shane Enright.
Yeah, it's carried in a lot of the newspapers this morning. There must have been some quotes from the launch last week that were held until this week. Talk about the Listowel races last year and Shane Enright's mother getting criticism for his performance against Mayo, which is pretty awful, to be honest. Like he says, it's bad enough if you're saying it to me, but to go and say it to my family member is pretty below the belt, and it is. It's not a nice thing to come back to you, much more so when it's coming from your own mother. Like that is, as Paddy says, that is an animal like behaving in that sort of way. Like there is no specifics there as to what was actually said.
Oh, it was about the second goal that Andy Moran scored.
No, I know that, but how vitriolic was what was said to his mother is what I want to know. I read the independent version.
I'll read this bit. So the full bit of information we have is what was said was just something over the goal the second day, which Andy Moran got. She didn't know them very well anyway. She wasn't too upset. She takes it in her stride as well, but it's not a nice thing to happen.
No, so we don't know. It might have been a passing remark, but it's still the process of that. It's not a great look. It's not a great look. And Darragh O'Shea, as Colin this morning talks about, kind of this week will involve a lot of Kerry players, and particularly Eamon Fitzmaurice, walking into rooms where the conversation abruptly stops. And conversation is probably about you.
I just want to point this out. So the Irish Times Online has a different headline to the headline on the piece. Kerry's leaders need to step up to the plate is the front page headline on Sports Wednesday on Darragh O'Shea's column. I'm just going to Darragh O'Shea, Kerry hurting because they lack the men to lead them.
Can I read out one passage from this?
Yeah. But that's a... Kerry lack the men to lead them.
Yeah, that's...
What's the implication? They're not men.
And that is...
That's like... Darragh O'Shea in this headline online questions the manhood of the Kerry footballers. In the piece in the paper is like, well, not that bad. What's the headline there?
Well, you're only reading into the
headline. Step up to the plate.
Well, you're only reading into the headline there. The piece,
people only read headlines.
Well, let me read out this passage to you. There was one fairly glaring error last Sunday. Another one came earlier in the day. He calls about that was one fairly big error, which is Donaghy not coming on. Then he says, another fairly glaring error came earlier in the day when the late replacement for Tadhg Morley was Killian Young. No disrespect to Killian, but he was never going to be the answer for that role. You were losing a tough, tigerish defender in Morley and bringing in a more ball-playing one in Killian Young. This wasn't the day for him. This was a day for men.
Oh!
I should say this wasn't the day for him, then new paragraph. This was a day for men. But you can see the implication here. You can, it's like former teammate. It's strong enough stuff. And just to continue what the rest of the paragraph says, so I don't want to bring it out of context. This was a day for men, full stop. I know that sounds overly simplistic, but trust me, when a situation calls for men and you don't have them, it becomes complicated very suddenly. There was a situation in the first half when David Clifford went out to collect the ball near the corner. He got knocked over not once, not twice, before managing to fiddle a 45 out of it. Clifford's a big lad and he can handle himself, but he's still the youngest player of the team at the back of it all. Where was his help? Who was coming in to take his lumps for him? Why is he having to fight those battles? Where were his leaders? And to be honest, there's only one name mentioned there, and it's Killian Young, which he uses to as a springboard to make the point. Where were the men in the team? Which is
he couldn't be a right corner forward at the same time, could he?
No, it's true. But another passage that I thought was very interesting. He talks about Seamus Moynihan, and Darragh O'Shea would always seek Moynihan out after a tough loss because Moynihan would always be taking the loss the worst, and there was something cathartic about that. It was like Moynihan always said to himself, I'm never going to let this happen again. I dare say this might have been post All-Ireland semi-final 2001, where Darragh O'Shea finds Seamus Moynihan after the Meath match after they get absolutely destroyed, and they're saying to themselves, this is never going to happen again. He says nobody made more pure and honest promises to himself that whatever happened when we got to that point again, he was going to make sure he did everything in his power not to feel that hurt. Watching from the stands on Sunday, I had to question whether or not that hurt exists in this Kerry panel. Are there enough fellas who have spent the day since it happened promising themselves that when the time comes on Sunday, they are going to be the one who does it? So serious questions being asked by Darragh O'Shea this morning of the Kerry players, of whether or not they've got the steel to step up and turn it around in a season-defining match.
He mentions it again, but Darragh O'Shea has famously gone on the record as saying, if I shot a man, the first person I would ring would be Eamon Fitzmaurice. He mentions it in the piece again today. Do you think that Eamon Fitzmaurice and Darragh O'Shea have had a conversation between the weekend and today, and that Eamon Fitzmaurice has asked him at some levels, consciously or subconsciously, to go out there and rattle the cages of the Kerry players?
Oh, that's an interesting... Because I thought you said, do you think a conversation has happened that Fitzmaurice says, go easy on me? I don't think that's the case. Yeah, that's an interesting... I hadn't thought about that. Well, you know, maybe like...
Because he's not... there was a mistake, they didn't bring Donny on, right? Like, critical error, and also critical error in, he says, in...
Killian Young instead of somebody else.
Yeah, but he's blaming Killian Young. He's not blaming...
That's true, yeah, it's a good point. It's, to be honest... I'm not sure, like, you could easily say that he's doing that out of his own accord because of the relationship he has, and he mentions in the piece that he was working with Fitzmaurice with the under-21s with Kerry. They've got a very close relationship.
Yeah, they live together.
So they mightn't need to have that conversation. But it's a good point, and, you know, it could have a productive end result. If I'm someone like David Moran reading that, because he talks about the kick-out strategy.
Where's the men?
But like in terms of the kick-out strategy, it's like, it's all well and good blaming the kick-out strategy, but if David Moran's not winning his own ball, then there's no kick-out strategy to talk about. So if I'm Moran reading that, I'm like, you know, I'm going to prove you wrong, Darragh O'Shea, this weekend. So absolutely, if it's going to rattle cages, then it can only be positive for everybody. It's going to be so interesting to see the reaction next week if Kerry lose on Sunday. I really hope we're not sitting here next week reading Darragh O'Shea's column if Kerry are out of the championship, because...
Well, come on, I mean, it would be a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
A once-in-a-lifetime experience? Well,
Kerry being knocked out in Clonus in the football championship. It might never happen again.
It might never happen again. I'm not looking forward to the guttural Monaghan roar if they knock them out on Sunday. But yeah, it's an extraordinary column. It's great stuff.
We're calling on the Monaghan people out there to get in touch and tell us just how crazy people in Monaghan are going. Primarily because what they have now is a home match against Kerry to reach an All-Ireland semi-final for the first time in their history. It's like, it's on a plate for them. It has been wrapped up in a nice little bow, and all they have to do is unhook the bow and see what comes out. And a place in the All-Ireland semi-final, potentially, as the group winners, avoiding Dublin.
Yeah, it's a huge carrot. They do have to go to Galway, obviously, the weekend after, which could be a decider for a top spot, which would be a great occasion in itself. You talk about dead rubbers until the last day, and if Monaghan and Galway are already through, that's not a dead rubber.
No.
That's
a let's avoid Dublin and get to the All-Ireland final.
Exactly. So that is the one positive of that. If
it would be Tyrone, so maybe they prefer Dublin.
Maybe, you know, like it's... That's
Stick your B team out, rest everybody up for that game and go right. We believe what we can do Dublin this time. Okay.
I wouldn't like you've written off Donegal left, right, and centre there.
I mean, I'm just doing that to try and goad them into a better performance in the same way that Darragh O'Shea is trying to goad.
Well, exactly. You're rattling cages yourself, sure.
All right, so let's hear from you. Let's be having you Monaghan people. How mad are you going? Are there blue and white sheep? There better be blue and white sheep. There better at least be a blue and white VW somewhere going. Kerry for the holidays, Monaghan for Sam. Okay, so we did the Irish Times. The back page of the Times Ireland edition is Liverpool's £62 million bid for Allison. The newspapers, they're all on it today. We're getting the transfer fees in pounds. O'Neill forced to end career. This is the news that Colin O'Neill has been forced to retire on medical grounds. A truly gifted footballer, able to kick points off both feet and just never fully fit after the cruciates, never fully able to release his own potential and ability, but like a balanced runner, a beautiful striker of the ball, just a gifted footballer. I remember watching a game in Longford. It was a game in Pearse Park, and half of Pearse Park is empty because the stand was sinking, and so the atmosphere was kind of corralled onto the same side that we were. We were doing the show from there that day, and he came off the bench to rescue Cork on the road.
I remember that 2 summers ago.
It was sunny and it was glorious, and he just had the ability to kind of pick space. Like you could see that, you know, the way the technology now that you can walk in and see 3D what the view is. You can tell that he's got that full 360 virtual reality sense of like, I'm going to the corner flag here, but I can ping a ball back to basically the penalty spot, and I know there's space there because I've seen it, except I haven't even looked up to see it. So I think there was one beautiful point that he kicked from the touchline as well, and you're thinking, this guy, this is a gift.
Yeah, it's gutting for him. It's absolutely devastating. Like, they must be looking around at the Super 8s at the moment, thinking to themselves, how has it all gone so annoyingly wrong for us? Such a bad streak of luck with things like Colin O'Neill, and then a bad streak of management, county board decisions that have led to football being in such a state that it is. That you look at players that have left over the last couple of years. You've got Colin O'Neill now, Donncha O'Connor, Paddy Kelly. Like, they're absolutely top quality talents. Aidan Walsh underperformed this year. You'd like to think there's a kick left in his career. But it's just a devastatingly great group of players that never reached the heights that they possibly could have, or never reached the heights of being involved in something like the Super 8s are, which is such a disappointment. You wish him all the best in his retirement. He was one of the greats.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so the Racing Post, BHA ignored other possible sources of Faugheen leak, claims vet's defence. So the Faugheen story has not gone away at the moment. I'm sure that there will be more on that. We'll try and cover that story a bit more later on in the week. And then Mountain Pressure, pardon me, tour about to get serious with first summit finished. So the next 2 days, the Tour de France is in the Alps. Alpe d'Huez is tomorrow. But if you haven't been watching up to now, yesterday was a pretty interesting stage. They went super fast. Super fast. Col de Colomiers yesterday.
Yeah, that was the last climb.
Dan Martin set a record for it.
Yeah, fastest ever climb of the Colombier, doing it at an average speed of 20.61 kilometres per hour. Just a tiny bit faster than the 20.53 kilometres per hour of the rest of the group, because I'm not sure if you're watching it, but he just makes a little bit of a breakaway coming to the crest of the climb. And they were asking on Eurosport afterwards, it was like, what was it? Why? Like, what? Why did he do that?
For the record, maybe?
Maybe it is. Maybe there is some sort of joint record. It is the fastest. He did it in 21.50. Like, there's some insane names. Like, when you look down through the list, you look at Nibali, you look at Wiggins, then you look at somebody like Lance and Michael Rasmussen, who did the climb in a slower time.
What was Lance's time?
Lance's time was 23.37.
What was Dan Martin's time?
21.50. Now, the thing is, when you look at that, Lance's time in 2009 was 2 days after a rest day. This is coming right off the back of a rest day. Dan Martin probably a little bit more aggressive. Like, if you watched Sky yesterday, on a purely tactical level, it was quite reminiscent of US Postal, the way they just sit in front of the peloton and just do what they have to do, control it. And that's what Sky did yesterday. You know, there was 14 other riders who were just 5 seconds slower than Dan Martin. The idea that the Tour de France has got slower is absolute nonsense, by the way, when you look at that yesterday, even if it is coming off the back of a rest day. You look at someone like Julian Alaphilippe with an unbelievable ride yesterday, which got everybody so excited. But coming back to the point on Dan Martin, Eurosport commentators afterwards were like, what's he doing? It's like, it doesn't matter really. There was that brief kind of 20 seconds of excitement that he gave, and he's an aggressive rider.
Does he get, is he potentially not looking at GC and looking for polka dot ultimately over the course? Is that something that he would be interested in?
I don't know. Like, the polka dot was out of his grasp at that point. Like, he knew that Alaphilippe was going to take that at that point.
But over the course of the
maybe he does. I think GC though. I think GC is what he's targeting. I'd be surprised if he's not. Also, as well, it was interesting to see him make that break. But it seemed, and I'm open to correction on this, it seemed that he was on his own. I can't remember there being too many other UAE riders in that 14-rider group. Whereas if Froome wanted to make a break, or if Thomas wanted to make a break, there was plenty of other Sky riders there to back him up. Okay,
well, let's move on, because we're going to talk boxing a little bit later on. It's always great when one of your guests coming up is already killing you in your Twitter feed. So we were tweeting earlier on, we were talking about the fight that's coming up, that Joshua is fighting Povetkin, and I was making the point that it's disappointing that he's not fighting Wilder. Gareth A. Davis, Povetkin's the #1 challenger for 2 of the belts. I'll put you straight at 8:40. So there you go, Gareth A. Davis, the perfect ringmaster, already hyping up this clash of him with his immense boxing knowledge and us Euro weenies sitting here going, okay, Mr. Davis, thanks very much for that. Which is how I predict that piece is going to go. But no, seriously, it would be better if this Wilder fight happened, right?
Yeah, I think it was kind of a mandatory challenge that he had to take, didn't he?
I did see one underneath it. Exactly. If people have a problem with mandatories, they should have a problem with Klitschko's whole career. Mandatories are part of boxing. We do have a problem with Klitschko's whole career. He completely avoided anybody who was any good for a decade, and they killed the heavyweight department for the best part of a decade by carving it up between each other. So, screw you, Dave Sykes. That's all I have to say about that.
Gilroy versus Davies on the undercard in Wembley in a couple of weeks is what I'm hearing.
No, I'm yeah. I'll take on Dave Sykes. I mean, who's he? Until we see there's a blue tick and he's like 4-time European champion or something.
Back page, you just called the viewer out. Back page of the Herald this morning is Pool's Allison Wonderland. Reds open talk with Roma and Bitaland, €70 million. Well, the thing is, they can put it in euro because
It's
what currency are Roma going to be accepting it in? The back page of the Mirror, they also go with the same headline. Allison Wonderland, Liverpool's world record £62 million bid for Roma star as Klopp fights Chelsea to land top target. And City can't win war in Poland. Legia Warsaw beat Cork City 3-0 in their Champions League qualifier. The back page of the Star this morning is €70 million. Liverpool make record bid for Brazil goalkeeper. No Legia to stand on then is the Cork headline. And Colin fit to face Dubs. That's Colin Kavanagh. He's back for the clash in Omagh this weekend, which is big news for Mickey Hart. The back page of The Guardian then.
He went off with 20 minutes to go as a precaution when the game was in the bag last week. So it's like match preview under another name.
Yeah, true. The Guardian is all cricket. Imperious Root and Morgan Seal series win. England's Test captain becomes his country's top ODI century maker on home ground. A sparkling 186-run partnership sees off India and clinches series. And the front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section is the same story. Ready for the big test. Root century seals one-day triumph as England fire warning to India.
There was, just want to reopen this very briefly. Paddy McEnany, nice Kerry rallying cry, lads. After your pro Kildare stance last week, Kerry this week, hashtag OTBAM. What? There was a bunch of people in my mentions all week in the immediate aftermath. Oh, there you are now, you're all tipping Kildare to win. I can't believe we overturned the favourites. Oh, what an amazing performance by the underdogs. Monaghan, and I wanted to cut and paste the same match to everybody. Monaghan were odds-on favourites. Kildare were the underdogs in that game. Jim McGuinness in the match, in the preview said, my head says Monaghan, my heart says Kildare. So Kildare were a populist story that some people wanted to see reach a fitting conclusion by having victory against Monaghan, but Monaghan were the overwhelming favourites. As the team who've been the established Division 1 team for the last decade, who have the absolute superstar footballer in Conor McManus. There was a lot of post-fact, oh, you were all writing us off. No one was right. Nobody wrote Monaghan off at all.
Just because, well, in their defence, there might have been people tipping Kildare.
Very few, really.
Few, but there was a case to be made for Kildare before last weekend. It didn't mean that you were writing Monaghan
momentum
off.
Case.
But Monaghan had momentum as well. Let's not forget that. Monaghan had momentum as well.
So then it's irrelevant. It's not a real thing.
Well, it's only relevant if the two forces of momentum are exactly equal, but clearly Monaghan's momentum was a bit bigger. But people might have been tipping Kildare. It doesn't mean that they were necessarily completely writing Monaghan off. It wasn't saying they've got no chance on Sunday. Just like this weekend. I slightly favour Kerry, as does the market, but Monaghan could win the game. And I would not be surprised one bit if Clonus is booming on Sunday, just waiting with bated breath for their first All-Ireland semi-final in 30 years.
Monaghan are the bet of the weekend. They are currently they're +2 on the spread at the moment, and they're 2-1. 2-1 about a 2-point spread is ridiculous. I think they were even bigger yesterday, so the money is coming for them. We'll get the exact Boyd Sports odds for you a little bit later on. We'll talk about this in some more detail. And then the last thing about Martin O'Neill was Del O'Brien's comment. Croatia don't have field sports such as Gaelic football, hurling and rugby as national sports, so the pool of players is much smaller. That should have been O'Neill's reply to Bilic. We have better players. Del, you're completely wrong. You're completely wrong. The whole point of us having all those sports means that we should be much better at other sports. Early specialisation is bad for outcomes for people playing sports later on. The whole notion that you would only play soccer in Croatia is also completely wrong, because they're amazing at basketball. They're amazing at
Olympic sports. They're brilliant on the track, aren't they?
There's one other. Are they good at Olympic handball? But they're definitely, so they're world class at basketball, as in they can send people to the NBA and people don't look at it out of place. And they don't specialise just in football. Very few countries who specialise in a single sport are actually really good at it. The whole notion that New Zealand is the model where you send players off to play rugby and nothing else is wrong. It's not that's not what we should be doing. We should actually be benefiting from the fact that our players have soccer or GAA skills, rugby skills and soccer skills in all of those sports. Now, whether or not soccer is tapping into that in the right way, that's a different question. But I don't think that we can go, oh, we've got hurling and football, so therefore we can never be good at soccer is actually true. We should be better at soccer because we have hurling and football, because players play more sports, they learn more skills, and all of those skills and ways of tactical thinking, etc., should be transferable.
Yeah, it's true. Maybe there's a lack of specialisation, or otherwise, when it comes to young soccer players, that if you're not making the break in soccer at 14, 15, it's kind of a little bit more of a forgiving atmosphere if you're not making the break in Gaelic football or hurling. So if you're playing both sports and you're an average player in both sports, which one are you picking? Are you sticking around with the soccer team that kind of has this regime in place where the top talent will move on to different teams, may move abroad, may move on to League of Ireland level? Or are you sticking with the GAA team who may or may not have a junior B prospect for you down the line? I don't know. It just seems like a little bit less of an intimidating atmosphere sometimes. That like ultimately the dual skills people will ultimately pick Gaelic games in quite a lot of situations.